Hey guys, I wanted to hop in here real quick and share something with you. I don't know if very many people have seen this, but this ties in with several different things, and it proves what I've been telling everybody that the powers that be they know what's going on. They're very aware. Biden made a statement earlier talking about flying saucers and aliens and stuff. People thought he was maybe speaking in code, talking about the train and this and that. He may have been. He very well may have been. And a lot of instances over history, people have let certain things slip. Even within the military, some people have heard things and seen things that they didn't really understand, or maybe shook them to the core of what was really going on. I've seen technology that is impossible for us to develop. Having secret clearance, I saw and heard some things that I probably shouldn't have seen and heard. Haven't talked about them with anybody to date, and I'll probably never talk about them to anybody because it's information that probably doesn't need to get out there. This article talks about this too because of what it would have caused and the problems it would have caused. Now, let me scroll through. It's a very long article. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's on prophecywatchers.com, and this article is also shared elsewhere. And it basically talks about Satan running things without people knowing it. I don't. I think some people don't. Most people don't know it, but I think there are some. But we're going to focus on Project Jehovah. Such was the case in 1947. Of course, let's get the context here. The previous paragraph says, but more importantly, for the purposes of this discussion, these occasional physical intrusions into our world are intentionally used to produce an illusion that will play into the human lust for power, talking about angels and stuff like that. Such was the case in 1947. The date is amazing because you guys know what happened 47, 48, right? Yeah. We're in the end times, guys. Bit by bit, the truth about Roswell and its crashed saucers is emerging. Over the past 55 years, the tight ring of secrecy, and I think this is an old article. Yeah, 2015. So, a lot's happened since then. Over the past 55 years, the tight ring of secrecy around the matter has steadily broken down. Men on their deathbeds have confessed to their families that things really happened. Hundreds of secret documents have been leaked. More than one crash site was reported. I had a friend when I was in school. He was there when his grandpa died, and his grandpa told some people in the family about some stuff. And he was made to leave the room. And a little while later, some government-looking men showed up and had a discussion with him. And he wouldn't talk about nothing anymore. I don't know. Don't know whether it's true or not. But, I've seen enough stuff now that I tend to lean more towards putting some legitimacy to things like that. There were strange craft and alien bodies that were taken to secret sites around the country. Studies were undertaken to understand how humanity would be affected should the secret ever be revealed. Many of the intelligentsia decided that society couldn't take the news without suffering some sort of collapse. This is true. This is why they don't show people the things they have that prove Jesus was real. Even though we know he was real, if they show the world those things, it'll completely mess up everything they're trying to do. There were some in the museum that was in Iraq. Actually, some pretty, very specifically interesting things. And whenever we first entered there, they, in fact, one of our units did security at that museum because they were bringing stuff back that had been taken and scattered all over. A lot of people tried to get this stuff out. Hobby Lobby here, just a little bit back, a few years ago, supposedly were caught smuggling religious artifacts out of Iraq. That was some of those stuff. That was stuff that was going to prove Jesus was real. And they almost destroyed them as a company and took it all back. They don't want people to know these things. It's like major stuff, not just little stuff. At the highest levels of government, the decision was made to classify any and every event that pertained to the extraterrestrial question, and thus it remains to this day. Documents from the 50s reveal that officials regarded these secrets as more delicate than the famed Manhattan Project that had developed the atomic bomb. Now, guys know recently they've opened up this stuff. Here's all this new information. None of that information is new. They were giving that information out in the 80s. They told nobody nothing. They showed nobody nothing. When I saw that, I'm like, so they didn't present anything. None of that's new. At that moment, a major death knell was sounded for representative government as it had been known in America since the days of the Founding Fathers. The top secret National Security Agency and its many branches were given carte blanche authorization to function autonomously. Trying to spit that out. At first, they reported to the executive branch, directly to President Harry S. Truman. Later, during the Eisenhower administration, their duties were farmed out, and compartmentalized, so that only the extreme need to know would enable one to gain access to their ongoing research. It's not secret. It's not top secret. It's very, very top secret. Sometimes only internal top secret. The result, I never got that level of secrecy in the Army. I was allowed into certain areas that were top secret, but yeah. Anyway, the result was a government whose leadership became ensnared in a scheme that would lead them progressively into a pit of spiritual darkness. Byzantine secrecy would soon characterize the inner circles of U.S. military and industrial planning. During the last decade, keep in mind this is 2015 that this came out. During the last decade, many researchers have documented these developments. Leading the way is an aerospace engineer named Dr. Robert Wood. He has painstakingly cataloged, documented, and published many of the documents of the era. They are called the Majestic 12 documents. This, of course, refers to the above top secret group assigned to deal with the apparent crash of extraterrestrial vehicles. So we all know all the lore and all the legend around Roswell. It really happened. It's just not what they told people. Among them, one finds a July 16, 1947 letter signed by U.S. Army Air Force Headquarters Commanding General Nathan Twining. It refers to an incident report on flying disc and mentions proving grounds in New Mexico. This date follows the famous Roswell crash, date of July 3, 1947, by only 13 days. Another carries the evocative title, code word White Pebble, MAGCOMSEC, Intelligence Eyes Only. Beneath these words, on a line by itself, we see the words Project Jehovah. Following that are words that, if true, are truly epoch-making in their importance. There's a reason why they called it Project Jehovah. Remember I told you guys, they've been talking to some of those fallen angels. It's not hard to figure out. You take one good look at this stuff, it's not hard to figure out because they know things that only those guys know. So, here's the subject. National Security Agency code breaking of alien codex and historical research of the Central Intelligence Agency, Mujibin Program, and Department of Defense UFO Identification and Detection Project Firestone. Prepared by MJ12 Group, that's pretty high, it's very high level, Technical Advisory Panel, Emergency Combat Communications, completed on October 2nd, 1962, approved by Executive Committee on 24 October 1962, meeting number 3. Pretty serious stuff for them to do that. They don't do that haphazardly. All this sounds like so much science fiction, but there's a great evidence that these are quite true. Imagine that an elite group decides that it is in the military's favor to know and understand how to decode alien UFO communications. Do you remember here lately they've been talking about all these radio signals they've been receiving? One of them they got wasn't like any of the other ones. This just happened. Just happened a few weeks ago. The one they got was like none of the others. It actually was like somebody was communicating with them. What some of the researchers hear are the beeps, boops, and statics, but what these guys hear is the actual message. And amazingly enough, it came right out of the Milky Way, which is right where the Lucifer telescope is aimed, by the way. Just saying. Clouds of heaven, hello. All the while, through various media outlets, they are vehemently scoffing at the reality of flying saucers, labeling them as swamp gas and optical illusions. Then imagine that these brilliant men have given the task to the very name of God in the Old Testament. Jehovah is the highest name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, David, and the prophets. It is as though these men believe that they are dealing with God, either personally or through his representatives. This is blasphemy of the first order. To assign the name of God to the work of devils is the highest form of delusion. It leads to corruption, greed, and lying on a mass scale. Project Jehovah was already a long-standing undertaking by 1962. One of the documents received by Dr. Wood is a 2-page letter written by Dwight D. Eisenhower, and it is dated November 4th, 1953. It recognizes the MJ-12 documents. This is a quote from that letter. I cannot overemphasize the need for the utmost discretion and understanding in exercising the authority set forth in these documents. Accordingly, I would like you to find some way to brief the various authorizing commanders on the subject to ensure that all are of one mind as to the letter and spirit of these instructions. Preferably, I would like to see this done in a closed meeting to be arranged through the Director of National Security Agency, yourself, and representatives of the MJ-12 Special Studies Project. I specifically want Project Jehovah Director Professor Albert Einstein and Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, I think, still alive, to inject any useful comments to the briefing, as they are most informed on the physics related to the subject. Perhaps the annual Quantico conference could provide an opportunity to do this without the publicity which would call attention to a special meeting. Sincerely, Dwight D. Eisenhower. They don't keep stuff like this a secret unless there's something to it. When you see technology come out in our mainstream world, the military and the government has already had it for at least 50 years. All these batteries we got now that have come out, they just came out here really just about in the last 10 years, maybe a little bit less than that. Lithium, the lithium ion technology, yeah, we had that in the military. We use that. The batteries that have a shelf life of 50 years, the Surefire batteries, we use those in the military. They just came out recently. Everybody was like, hey, that's cool. These things can sit on the shelf forever and they stay good. Yeah, we use those in there. That's what our flashlights took, and a few other pieces of equipment. If the technology is in the world, military has already had it. Your GPS system, military had that already. Any of that stuff, military already had it, and it has come out. Now, you see a lot of people talk about this new stuff. It's all distraction. They're not going to use any of that stuff. All the robotic technology that's out there now, military had it first. I've got a T-shirt from the event we had at Fort Hood back in 2009, where they were testing all this stuff. And they were going out there and doing all these cool things with robotics. Now police agencies have the same robots. Yeah. For military people, it's old technology. It is astonishing to realize that while publicly ridiculing the idea of extraterrestrial contact, our leaders were secretly devoting huge amounts of money and brain power to the problem. Ostensibly, they were trying to protect the citizenry from the shock of learning that we are not alone. In fact, they had been duped by creatures that any other age would have been rejected as dark powers, demons who had materialized in our world. The name of the project, Jehovah, tells us that the brilliant men who struggled to understand the windfall from a New Mexico desert ascribed godlike properties to it. The theoretical mathematics and physics, understood only by men like Einstein and Oppenheimer, were called upon to decipher a new physics. What records that have been gleaned from their operations tell us that they failed to make sense of what they found. You guys know what monoatomic gold is, right? Yep, it's a powder. It's a white powder. Monoatomic gold, when certain frequencies are passed through it, can levitate, can turn invisible. There's videos on YouTube about it. It does all kinds of strange stuff, and you can actually eat it. They think that they used to bake it into bread and feed it to people that they considered gods, their leaders or whatever, thousands of years ago. They think that the reason why people live so long and were bigger back during Noah's time and before was because there was a lot of this monatomic gold in all the plants and everything. And over time, it's diminished. It's been processed. They think a lot of alien technology is based on it. I don't know. Ironically, they were the ones who had unlocked the power of the atom. Now they struggle in vain to make sense of a strange alien intelligence. You guys know that back then, we had a lot of scientific advances. How fast have we jumped forward in the years that have followed that? Remember, airplanes didn't exist about 100 years ago. Now you can fly airplanes, a regular airplane, into the stratosphere. They couldn't even get them off the ground about 100 years ago. So, pretty interesting. The MJ-12 documents show that they studied the wreckage for signs of German or Russian language traces. They found none. They found a compartment on one craft thought by Dr. Oppenheimer to be an atomic engine. They discovered and described flexible glass cables wrapped in a woven sheath, thin sheets imprinted with pure silver with thousands of microscopic connections. These we now know to be fiber optics and printed circuits. The flex, you know what else? The graphene, that's alien technology. It's clear graphite. That's bendable. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. It has amazing properties. Where do you think that came from? We didn't come up with that. We don't have people smart enough to come up with stuff like that. They saw bladeless turbines. There's recently been an advancement in hovercraft, and you can fly 100 feet off the ground, and it's almost turn on a dime control. And a guy built looks like a little go-kart cage, and he flies around in this thing. That's recently happened. Power that seemed to flow endlessly, structures that seemed to be molded rather than welded, like all those rocks at those things where they fit so you can't even get paper through them. Yeah. And perfectly formed components without welded joints, fasteners, or solder joints. Along with our leading scientists, the Majestic 12 project included a wide list of the top men in the Truman administration, including Dr. Vannevar Bush, who chaired a panel that included men like General J. Lawton Collins, Deputy Chief of Staff, United States Army, and General Hoyt S. Vandenberg, Vice Chief of Staff, United States Air Force. Other scientists were also included. In addition to Einstein and Oppenheimer, the panel featured Jerome C. Hunsaker, MIT, National Academy of Sciences, Dr. Hugh L. Dryden, Director of Aeronautical Research, NACA, and Dr. James H. Doolittle, then associated with Shell Oil Company. All these names and more appeared on a 1948 report called A Review of the President's Special Panel to Investigate the Capture of Unidentified Platform Space Vehicles by U.S. Armed Forces and Agencies. It was reported that in addition to a phenomenal inventory of undecipherable hardware, the government had collected a number of tiny bodies at the crash site. They were said to be the size of children with large heads and huge eyes, the Greys, they call them. One of them was even said to have been kept alive for a time. Reports say that it communicated by thoughts rather than speech. The details of these accounts are perhaps less important than the fact of their sudden appearance in our world. Now, again, a lot of this may be a little bit off from what it really was, because we don't know what kind of influence these demons had, these guys at the time. Where had they come from? To this day, say the experts, the question is unanswered. Some say that they are Pleiadians. Now that, the Pleiades star system, it's said, in fact, the Bible even talks about that there's, or hence, and there's other documents that refer to this too, about certain people being from the Pleiades. It's pretty interesting that you see a lot of documentation out there, old documentation and stuff involving this, talking about or people that are Pleiadians. Or Zeta Reticulans, that's also another star system, named after star systems visible to our astronomers. More likely, and biblically, they are from right here on planet Earth, I agree. They are none other than followers of the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. They're demons. There are no aliens. There are no other life forms out there that are going to come visit us. These are demonic in nature, in every form, because every interaction that has been with them has ended in some kind of demonic result. And anytime Jesus Christ's name is mentioned, the situation immediately changes. These things are very heavily affected by the name Jesus Christ. There's all kinds of reports on this. It's all over the place. You do a little digging, you find it. Now, this article goes on. I'm not going to read the whole thing because we got the point. But you guys can dig into this article yourself. Let's see if there's anything interesting here. They found lasers, microchips, super strength fibers. Is everything from construction to space travel. It is indispensable. From this device alone, profits in the billions of dollars have been realized. Where could our government have gotten the idea that their newly acquired alien technology came from Jehovah? Could it have been from the first chapter of Ezekiel, in which the prophet saw a whirling fiery chariot that came and landed before him? Yeah, that was pretty interesting, because here a while back, well, last year, they said, we see Ezekiel's wheel, and it was moving through they caught it on some kind of spectrogram they have on a satellite looking at the sun, and they saw it coming. It was coming towards the earth. And they're like, yeah, that's a shadow from this. And that's not what that was in that image. It wasn't a shadow. You could tell what it was. It was very clear what it was. It's wheels within wheels, and crystal dome, firmament stretching over the head of one, set on the throne, highly suggestive technology beyond man's wildest dreams. They got some quotes from Ezekiel here. Okay, I'll link this in the description for you guys to read it. What I want to do, though, is I want to bring your attention to something else. Now, we know that these people know what's going on. They have this information, and there's even more information out there that our governments have been talking to. That's why there's such a big focus in Antarctica right now. They don't want anybody in Antarctica. You can't even fly over it. Russia tried it. They flew one of their Concords over it. When they were doing all that stuff in Venezuela, they flew one of their Concords over it. Yeah, they scrambled a bunch of F-15s to go run them down. Okay. They know something's going on. This is very interesting, guys. I'm telling you. I talked about this already. Yeah, this whole statue thing over here is getting out of hand. This was in 2019, and that's when this thing happened. Israel simulates an earthquake with casualties of 7,000 people. He wrote an article, and he talked about how that seemed to mirror Revelation 11:13. So let's go look at Revelation 11:13 real quick. Revelation 11:13, in the same hour there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. In the earthquake, 7,000 people were killed, and the rest were afraid and gave glory to God of heaven. The second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. This event that they did, this test thing, this scramble, to see if they could get a response to a situation like this from the ocean, because they said it involved massive tsunamis. It specifically mirrored this scripture from Revelation. Why are they doing that unless they think that we're close? That doesn't make any sense. So let's take a look at this. An article by the Times of Israel, August 12, 2019, reported on one of the largest Israeli naval exercises dubbed Mighty Waves 2019. The simulation brought together representatives from 10 other nations as well as NATO. 10 other nations. No kidding. What an interesting number. The United States, France, and Greece, again, interesting people involved here, fully participated in the exercise, sending ships and personnel to Haifa to take part in drills alongside their Israeli counterparts. Representatives from Cyprus, Chile, Italy, Germany, Canada, the United Kingdom, and NATO observed and took part in the non-physical aspects of the drill. They mobilized ships. They had battleships out there. They had aircraft carriers. They had everybody out there. You don't spend that kind of millions of dollars in fuel unless there's something to it. I know. I've been in military training. I've been in hardcore military training. You have two reasons why you spend a lot of money on military training. One, because you know it's about to happen. You know something's going to happen. And you got to get everybody on board and know what they're doing. Number two, you have inside information about the event. You don't train for there not to be anything. You train because there's going to be something. There's a purpose behind all that stuff. It was also the nation's first exercise solely dedicated to earthquake response. The naval drill had two main goals: to practice setting up a sea gate, which they did, through which the majority of the humanitarian aid Israel would need in the aftermath of a massive earthquake would pass, and more generally, to learn how to more effectively work with the various national and international organizations that would be involved in the disaster relief work. And I dare say this, but I believe these were people that were involved in one of the 10 Kingdoms groups. It says 10 Kingdoms, beast with 10 horns, or 7 heads and 10 horns. Each head has a group of 10 underneath it. You know, the Bible tells you it's nations. So we're seeing this was one of those heads, or one of those groups. The article cited that part of the reason for the earthquake exercise was due to the fact that Israel currently lies on the Syrian-African rift. This is what's going to split the Mount of Olives in half. The last major earthquake in the region occurred in 1927, a 6.2 magnitude tremor that killed 500 people and injured 700. Why they wouldn't have done any practicing before then, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. The specific type of earthquake they were simulating was a 7.5 magnitude quake striking the Beit Shean Valley in northern Israel, killing 7,000 people, injuring thousands more, damaging hundreds of buildings, and leaving over 150,000 homeless. This is quite specific dynamics to this. Where's the Beit Shean Valley? Let's take a look. Images. Let's take a look at what we're right here. Beit Shean Valley. Well, they got a lot of stuff built there. Old stuff. It's kind of pretty there. Okay. Tell you what, yeah, it looks like there's a lot of stuff going on there. I tell you what, let's go under maps. And let's see if we can get a top-down view. Let's see where it's at. Let's back out a little bit. This will give us an idea. Back out a little more. Here we go. So you can see why they would do this as a naval exercise, because the ocean is right there on the left. There's Haifa. There's the Sea of Galilee up to the north there. Yep. Let's change this to... Nope, not street side. Where's it at? Trying to see dark road. Well, it's easier on the eyes. Aerial. Let's see if we can get an aerial shot. Here we go. This is what I was looking for. So, what do all we got here? Looks like an unincorporated area. Trying to figure out where it's at in relation to Jerusalem. Jerusalem must be north. Oh, there's Golden Heights. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that works. Right in the Golden Heights. The mountains to the north. So Jerusalem must be down here. There's Jerusalem. There's Jerusalem right there. So yeah, that fault line, it's in that valley. If it's that major of a fault line, that fault line runs all the way down this whole thing here. That's a whole plate right there. Yep, right there, right through Jerusalem. Interesting. You can track and follow that whole ridge line right down through there, right to Jerusalem. So that's what's going to split the Mount of Olives in half. Okay, let's go back to this. A great earthquake. I stated earlier in the article, This isn't the first time the number 7,000 was mentioned when talking about casualties that may result in a devastating earthquake in Israel. In an article titled After Tremors, experts warn a huge quake is the greatest threat facing Israel, posted by the Times of Israel last year, they stated. And they've been preparing for, by shoring up the Temple Mount to make sure it doesn't collapse because they're expecting an earthquake. Earthquake, experts warn a huge quake is the greatest threat. Home Front Command put expected casualties from a major quake at 7,000 dead and 200,000 homeless. That's very specific. Below are 3 more sources I discovered while doing some extra research for the article that gives the same numbers. So it's the Jewish News Syndicate, Haaretz, and The Guardian. All talk about this specific event. Once every 1,000 years. That's pretty interesting that they would get it that specific. And it's specifically mentioned in the Bible. My goal for this article is to communicate the fact that this is not a coincidence. The recent article makes 6 articles now that have given the same figures. It would be one thing if all 6 articles had varying estimates of the casualties, but instead, what we're seeing is all the articles are getting the same number of 7,000 people killed, while also reporting on various estimates for those injured and homeless. For example, the Times of Israel's latest article lists the injured as thousands and the homeless at 150,000. Their article from 2018 gives an estimate of those homeless at 200,000, while Haaretz's article, written early this year, gives an estimate of 70,000 homeless. The Jerusalem's Post article, also written in 2018, gives an estimate of the number injured at a combined figure of 18,100 and 107,000 less homeless. Almost like they know how many people specifically are going to be affected. Specifically. But all of them come to the same conclusion that 7,000 people are going to die. It's impossible to get that tight of a figure. It is literally impossible. Could be 2 causes for the estimates. Different sources were used for the various estimates leading to various numbers. The same source was used, but the estimates were updated as time progressed and more information was acquired. Despite these 2 scenarios, the question still remains as to why, after more than 6 years, we still see the number 7,000 killed across varying news sources. Let me repeat myself when I say this isn't a coincidence. I agree. It's not a coincidence. There's more to this. They know. They know it's coming. They know it's going to happen. Now, the degree of information they have, I don't know, but they know. As stated in the beginning of the article, we see that all 6 articles gave the number 7,000 people dead, which mirrors what the Bible tells us in Revelation 11:13 to the exact number. So now we can see the exact same message, both in the Bible, 6 separate news sources listing the same casualty count for an earthquake, but some questions many may have is how do we know the Bible is telling us this will occur in Israel? Couldn't this just be a generic prophecy we're just reinterpreting into our time period? Read it. You just read it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Revelation 11:8. And their dead bodies will lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. Then those from the peoples, tribes, tongues, and nations will see their dead bodies 3.5 days, and not allow their bodies to be put into graves. And those who dwell on the earth will rejoice over them, make merry, and send gifts to one another, because these 2 prophets tormented those who dwell on the earth. Now after the 3.5 days, the breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and great fear fell on those who saw them. And they heard the loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they ascended to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies saw them. Where does this take place of the 2 witnesses? Well, in verse 1, John is literally measuring the temple. Leave out the court. Well, where's the temple at? Jerusalem. So obviously this is talking about Jerusalem. Obviously this is specifically referencing Jerusalem. Very specifically. So we know that what this is tying to. And he gets into that right here, actually. He gets into that. Did you catch that? Whether you believe the Bible to be God's word or you believe the Bible is a book of fairy tales, the fact remains that the book of Revelation was written almost 2,000 years ago, and that the author claimed during a future 7-year period of time known as the tribulation. After a series of specific events concerning specific people in a specific location during a specific duration of time, an earthquake will occur 3.5 years into the tribulation and kill 7,000 people. He also claimed this earthquake will occur when Jesus was crucified. And there was one. I'll link this in the description. You can read the rest of it yourself. The whole point of this, and the point of what I'm trying to get across to you here, is that all these things that are happening, all these things that we're seeing, all this stuff is taking place, even the pandemic. This isn't something that's a mystery to the powers that be, the people that are in charge. They know what's happening. They're very aware of what's going on. They're not ignorant to these facts and these things. They've been talking with individuals. They have had contact. They have been in communication with other entities. Now, whether they realize what they're talking to or who they're talking to, and that this all ties to the Bible to a greater or lesser degree, that's up in the air. But I guarantee you there are many world leaders, when asked, they admit, we see this all in the Bible. The Bible proves it true. People that are against Jews and against Christianity, they say, we see it, it's in the Bible, it's true, it's happening. They are aware. If the secular and unbelieving world leaders are aware of this, what does that tell you? They know. They know it's about to happen. That's why things are going the way they are. They know we're about to leave. They know that these are the last days. We're in the final time. I mean, you watch Ken Johnson, and they have a bunch of documentation that specifically logs the lifespans of all the people from Adam down. They can count the years. We're not in 5782, the year of wonders. We're in 59, best count, 5942. Right? Actually, they think it's a hair later than that. 5962, I think. And they can count it almost specifically. God does things in 3 ages. They have documentation from old prophets that proves that. We're in the 3rd age at the end of it. It's very specific. Very, very specific. Another fun fact, when you go back and listen to that stuff, or even read it for yourself, which you can bring some of it up online and look at it. Other guys like Ken have books out there breaking it down. Ken's one of the guys, if you haven't checked him out, Ken Johnson sometimes appears on Prophecy Watchers. But you can go over to his YouTube channel and catch his stuff. I'll link his channel in the description. He does a lot of this. He's one of the guys that does a lot of the interpreting for scrolls that they find. And so he gets his chance to get his hands on those. He interprets them and then puts them out in booklets. I have one of the Essene calendar books. The stuff that he's found tells us all this stuff too. Now, I didn't get it from him. I don't know. I just read the Bible and it makes sense to me. But I'm listening to him and I'm hearing all this stuff and it's like, okay, well, that's exactly what I thought because that's what I read, what the Bible says. Well, now we have proof showing it. A lot of those guys say a lot of things that are about our time right now that are kind of surprising. But they're also validating. They prove what we already know. We're there. If you need encouragement about whether we're there or not, we're there. I know a lot of people are trying to lie about this. A lot of people are trying to persuade other people to go another way. Or they're realizing, well, we thought it was going to happen in 2021. Looks like we're wrong. And they're trying to find some way to backpedal. No, I'm going even further into this because I have no doubt we're right there. All the dates match up. All the counts match up. Everything matches up perfectly. And this is another way, this stuff here is another way to prove it. So take it for what it's worth. Look into it yourself. Check out the information yourself. And prove it to yourself. It's very easy to do. All right, see you guys in the next one.